How do I fix hamstring pain when running? Well, you need to make the kinetic chain stronger. Al had been running marathons and ultras for years. Prior to 2016, he'd run a marathon in every province in Canada. Unfortunately, though, he had to have a total hip replacement and he was told to never run again. Al followed the doctor's orders, but after a couple of years of not running, he found he was becoming fat and depressed, and that is his words, not mine. After a couple of conversations with his medical team, he decided he preferred the risk of wearing out his new hip to the certainty of being miserable. He returned to running and slowly built himself back up to marathon training. Then he heard about something called the Abbott 6, a medal awarded to anyone who completes the 6 major marathons. That's New York, London, Tokyo, Chicago, Berlin, and Boston. Al already had New York under his belt, and he was excited to raise money for the official charities and get his entry spots to the other 5. He got his ticket to Tokyo and built up his marathon training ready for the race. Unfortunately, he had awful pain in the hamstring of the leg where he'd had that hip replacement. He limped across the finish line in Tokyo and he was in pain for days after. Al had an excellent physio where he lives who managed to get him up and running again after Tokyo. But he was really worried about continuing on to the other 4 marathons. He was registered for the Chicago Marathon in the fall, but he wasn't sure if that was such a good idea. I spoke with Al on a free call a few months after Tokyo. He told me all of the challenges he'd had with his running over the last few years and why it was so important to him to keep going. He told me that the pain in his leg after Tokyo was so bad that he just wanted to quit running. On top of his worries that he was damaging his new hip, the pain in the hamstring just sapped all of the joy out of running. It was really important to Al to have a big goal for his running. He knows he's not the fastest runner, but he's still an ambitious dude, and he felt like the Abbott 6 medal was a real bucket list item for him, something he could be proud of. To miss out on it because of hamstring pain would suck pretty bad. On our call, Al described how weak that left leg felt. Doing lunges or getting up from the floor just felt way harder on that side. He'd done his rehab after the hip replacement, but he'd never really regained his full strength. He was worried about damaging his hip, so he wasn't pushing it on the strength exercises. I told Al he essentially had 2 problems. The first was weakness in the hamstring. That was what caused it to be easily overloaded in the marathon and on longer, harder training runs. Avoiding heavy exercises on that side had allowed the hamstring to become weaker. In the medical world, we call this stress shielding. In the short term, it stops you from overloading the muscle and causing pain, but in the long term, it allows the muscle to get weaker and makes it more vulnerable. The second problem was weakness in the kinetic chain. Now, the kinetic chain sounds like a really intimidating, complicated concept, but it's actually pretty simple. Different muscles in different parts of the body work together to produce our movements. If one of those muscles isn't pulling its weight, the other muscles have to work harder. I think of it like rows in a boat. So if there's 6 rows in a boat and one of them is just taking it really easy, the other 5 are going to have to work way harder to go at the same speed. With Al, not only was his hamstring weak, but so was his glutes, his adductors, his calf, his lower back and core muscles. So when he landed and pushed off when he was running, the hamstring was placed under even more stress. So not only was the hamstring too weak to do its job, but the other muscles in the kinetic chain were actively making that job harder. To fix the problem, we had to do 2 things. Number 1, strengthen the hamstring. Number 2, strengthen the kinetic chain. So Al committed to doing 2 heavy strength sessions every week in addition to his marathon training for Chicago. We focused on exercises that would make the hamstring stronger, as well as the kinetic chain muscles supporting it. Things like lunges, split squats, single leg deadlifts. We progressed the weight as he got stronger to make sure he was always adapting. 4 months after he started with us, Al ran the Chicago Marathon, and he only had a tiny bit of pain in the hamstring afterwards. Nothing like it was before. He finished strong and had a great time. Al still has pain in his hamstring when he's driving, and that leg feels stiff and weaker on the lunges and getting up from the floor, even now. He had a whole new joint put in. Then he had several years of deconditioning in those muscles due to the stress shielding that we talked about. Al's aware that it will never be perfect. He just wants it to be good enough for him to keep running marathons. Al had already seen what would happen if he had to quit running. Taking those couple of years off after the hip replacement made him really depressed. He gained a bunch of weight and became less healthy overall. That was just after a couple of years. Extrapolate that out to a couple of decades, and we can imagine how that story ends. Returning to running against doctor's orders was not an easy decision for Al. But he took the time to do his research and discuss it with a surgeon and his physician. He weighed up all the pros and cons and then made an informed decision for himself. Then he worked with us to make sure his leg was as strong as it could be and give him the best chance to succeed. Now he's rediscovered the joy of running and training for a big goal. We're continuing to work with him to make the hamstring and its supporting kinetic chain muscles even stronger. He's got 3 out of his 6 medals, and he's hoping to get a charity spot for Boston in the spring. Congratulations, Al. We're really proud of you. If you've had an injury in a part of your body and you feel like maybe you've been going a bit easy on it and stress shielding it, and now it's not up to the kind of training that you want to do, we can probably help you. Just click the link in the description to book a free call with us. We'll have a chat all about it, see where you're at, and see if we can help you.